again, welcome to the program. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has made a surprise visit to the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Mr. Blinken met with President Volodymyr Zelensky at the presidential headquarters in Kiev. Mr. Blinken promised U.S. aid will make a real difference against the Russian aggression on the battlefield, indicating that military assistance is now on the way, with some already arriving and more to come. Mr. Zelensky lauded the crucial U.S. aid passed last month by Congress, stressing the need for weapons to be delivered quickly. And President Zelensky said that it had been a tough period for Ukrainian warriors, especially in the east of the country. He also spoke about Ukraine's outstanding needs, saying that air defense was the biggest deficit and that Kharkiv needed more air defenses. The U.S. Secretary of State also met with Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has announced Washington's plans to deliver a new arms package to Ukraine. Mr. Sullivan noted that aid is called Presidential Drawdown Authority Package, for which will be delivered in the coming days. He also noted that the delay in getting the aid to Kiev is putting the frontline troops into a hole in the battlefield, and that the U.S. is working endlessly to correct that.
I don't want to suggest that all $1 billion worth of equipment is on the battlefield, but what you will see is a steady flow week by week. It's not like we've got to wait well out into the future before stuff starts getting delivered. And we are going to have another, what we call PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority Package, just in the coming days, because we're trying to really accelerate the tempo of the deliveries, recognizing, as I said before, the delay put Ukraine in a hole, and we're trying to help them dig out of that hole as rapidly as possible. How we do the drawdown is a little bit less of the central issue than what the size of it is and what the sequence of actual deliveries are. So I'm not going to suggest that there'll be a drawdown every week. What I am going to suggest is that the level of intensity being exhibited right now in terms of moving stuff is at a 10 out of 10. So at the highest levels in our government, we are engaged with the highest levels of theirs to be able to ensure that we're doing everything humanly possible, both ourselves and our allies who are surging equipment as well, to get it there to the front line. One of the things I do every single day is talk to at least one ally, if not multiple, about getting more Patriot batteries into Ukraine. I think we recently had some good news from an ally about getting one in. We're working on more. That's just something that we're going to continue to try to procure. And beyond Patriots, we're looking for other systems as well.
And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said that the reconstruction of Ukraine will be very expensive. He made this known at the 2024 NATO Youth Summit in Brussels. He also pointed out the finger at China, saying that it is the main country supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. And China has become an increasingly important economic ally since countries in the West hit Russia with a wide range of sanctions. The United States has accused China of supplying Russia with items used in its assault on Ukraine.
The main country that is enabling Russia to conduct its war of aggression against Ukraine in Europe is China. They are by far the biggest trading partner for Russia. They are delivering critical components to their weapons, electronics, advanced technology, which is enabling Russia to build missiles, drones, a lot of other stuff, which is key for their war against Ukraine. Reconstruction will be very expensive, but prevention is cheaper than in a way repairing. So meaning that every air defense missile we can provide to Ukraine will actually mean less damage, less destruction, and then also less need for reconstruction after the war.
To French, away from that now, speaking of China, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said he is expecting to visit the country later this week. Chinese Foreign Ministry said that Mr. Putin will be visiting the country on the invitation of President Xi Jinping. Both leaders will exchange views on cooperation in various fields of bilateral relations in the context of the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Russia. They are also expected to discuss international international and regional issues of common interest. President Putin last visited in October 2023, and this will be the first foreign trip since he was re-elected. 2 French prison officers have been killed and 3 others injured in an ambush on a prison in Vannes in France. The incident occurred when the prisoner was being transported in a van from the courtroom to the prison. The inmate later escaped together with the attackers. French President Emmanuel Macron said that everything is being done to find the perpetrators, as hundreds of police officers have reportedly been deployed to carry out this manhunt. French media named the inmate as Mohamed Amr, born in 1994, and the 30-year-old was serving an 18-month jail sentence for theft. Georgia's parliament has voted through the divisive foreign agent law that has sparked weeks of mass street protest. But the bill now faces a likely veto by Georgia's president, which parliament can override by holding an additional vote. Critics are saying the bill, which they call the Russia law, could be used to threaten civil liberties. But thousands of people gathered near the parliament in Tbilisi to protest this decision. But on Monday this week, Prime Minister warned that if authorities back down on the bill's 3rd reading, then Georgia would lose sovereignty and easily share the fate of Ukraine without detailing what he actually meant. The protesters heckled the police, clad in full riot gear, guarding the side entrances to the building. The atmosphere then became tense inside the parliament too, with physical and verbal altercations all taking place between pro-government and opposition MPs. 26 police officers have been injured in Mexico City in clashes with protesters who threw firecrackers. The protesters were taking part in a demonstration demanding justice for 43 students who disappeared in 2014 from the town of Ayotzinapa in southern Guerrero state. The demonstrators were very angry at the release from pre-trial detention last week of 8 soldiers suspected to be involved in the students' disappearance. City officials are saying that 26 officers had sustained injuries from the firecrackers, including to their arms and their legs, and they had been taken to hospital for treatment. However, the protesters dispersed after that altercation. The United States has warned of potential sanctions for any country considering business deals with Iran hours after India signed a 10-year contract to operate a port with Tehran. India had entered an agreement to develop the strategically important port, which is close to Iran's border with Pakistan, back in 2016. But on Monday, it signed a long-term deal with Iran to develop it further. India's shipping minister called it a historic moment in India-Iran ties. But analysts are saying the move may not go down well with the United States, which has now imposed more than 600 sanctions on Iranian-related entities over the past 3 years.
We're aware of these reports that Iran and India have signed a deal concerning the Chabahar port. I will let the government of India speak to its own foreign policy goals vis-a-vis the Chabahar port, as well as its own bilateral relationship with Iran. I will just say, as it relates to the United States, U.S. sanctions on Iran remain in place and will continue to enforce them. So broadly, Sean, you've heard us say this in a number of instances. Any entity, anyone considering business deals with Iran, they need to be aware of the potential risk that they are opening themselves up to and the potential risk of sanctions.
Supporters of U.S. former President Donald Trump are standing firmly behind him amid the ongoing hush money trial in New York. Many of them were gathered outside Manhattan court, waving flags, placing banners at the roadside as the former U.S. president's ex-lawyer Michael Cohen testified. Well, the former president is facing 34 felony counts of falsified business records and has pleaded not guilty to all the charges. It relates to the alleged hush money payment of $130,000 made to Stormy Daniels in 2016, which prosecutors are claiming was to stop her from going public about their alleged sexual liaison, which Mr. Trump also denies.
They still haven't come up with any evidence of a crime. So they're 2 weeks in. I'm sorry, longer than that, probably 3 weeks. And they haven't come up with any evidence at all. So this is one complete sham. Donald Trump is standing his ground. He's holding the line. He's going to come out and the truth will be told that there's really no crime whatsoever. And this is just to defame him and to put a bad name out there and try to pull up as much dirt as possible under the public eye, which are these cameras. So for me, he's going to come off of this indictment and every other indictment.
And Kazakhstan's top court has sentenced a former economy minister to 24 years in prison for torturing and murdering his wife following a widely watched trial that many people saw as a test of the president's promise to strengthen women's rights. 44-year-old Kandyk Bishmayev has been found guilty and sentenced by the Supreme Court. His trial, which was being broadcast live over the past 7 weeks, has been seen as an attempt by authorities to send a message that members of the elite are no longer above the law. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has said that he wants to build a fairer society, including improved women's rights. The case has now helped rally public support behind a law criminalizing domestic violence, which Parliament passed just last month. Government data show that 1 in 6 women in the Central Asian nation has experienced violence by a male partner. A whistleblower who helped expose allegations of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan has been sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in jail. David McBride also pleaded guilty to stealing and sharing military secrets of the eve of his trial last year after legal rulings sunk his defense. As an ex-military lawyer, Mr. McBride said that he felt a moral duty to speak up. A landmark inquiry later found evidence that Australian forces had unlawfully killed 39 Afghans during the war. His case has sparked uproar in Australia, putting a spotlight on what many have said are flimsy whistleblower protections and slowing the progress towards persecuting soldiers alleged to have killed with impunity under its flag. Well, let's take you back to the story we told you earlier about former U.S. President Donald Trump's hush money trial and how his U.S. supporters are solidly behind him. Many of them were outside a Manhattan court waving flags and, of course, placing banners on the roadside as the former U.S. president's ex-lawyer Cohen testified in court. Now let's bring in Channels Television's Washington correspondent Maria Bird to tell us more about this development. Hello, Maria.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. All right, now these supporters have been with Mr. Trump ever since he declared his intentions to run for president. If we recall back in 2015 and even now, did they even consider the possibility that he might go to jail after his trial?
I think that was never in the thoughts. I think that today, and I think it was very much expected that after the former confidant of the former president, Michael Cohen, testified that there could be some challenges there. And so I think where we are at this time is that this is never what anyone expected, nor is this at all what I think that the American people are bracing to see what will happen, especially as we're entering into this next election cycle. Actually, today in the state of Maryland, they are doing their primary elections. So it's a very interesting time in American politics.
And speaking of the trial, actually, Mr. Trump's former lawyer, Cohen, has continued his testimony today of Mr. Trump approving a plan to reimburse him for about $130,000, which was paid to an adult film actress, and that's Stormy Daniels, as hush money. But what have you heard about his testimony and how it could impact on this trial?
His testimony pretty much corroborated with Stormy Daniels and what she stated had happened. It does corroborate with what the allegations are, that there were falsification of business records as it relates to the payoff, and that he was supposed to, as you mentioned, receive a reimbursement for doing that. And so He has basically stated everything that the defendant is saying happened, that Stormy Daniels is saying happened. So as he was the close confidant, and obviously he himself has had some legal trouble as a result of his business dealings with the former president, this will bring, I think, a very turn in the case potentially for the jurors, but really it does put a stake in the ground, and it also further supports why the judge is stating that the gag orders existed or still exist for the former president, just to ensure that there is no meddling as it relates to how the case is carried forth, especially as these witnesses are testifying.
But even as we speak, Maria, the former president is still holding his impromptu press conferences, and that's despite a gag order by the judge. Just today, he reportedly held his longest press conference outside the courtroom where his supporters were. What did he say that could help us understand better? I mean, what has been going on in the courtroom?
I think what he's, as we know, the former president has skillfully, since, as you mentioned, 2015, when he was able to clinch the presidency, he has very skillfully been able to use media, been able to use language to have his base to support him and to potentially change the minds of other voters. As we know, it's a very important time in U.S. politics with this election cycle and knowing that he's on the ballot. So this is really a ability for him to push the fact that he's going to continue to claim his innocence, that he's going to use this as a ploy to say that this is as a way to demean him and to have his base to not believe that he is the right man for the next presidency, and also further having the speaker with him. I mean, that was a very clear sign and a imagery for especially those Republican voters to know or to believe potentially that he is actually a man of honesty, a man of integrity, despite what this case is saying. And as we know, the speaker has been very vocal in stating the fact that this case is falsified, it's a lie, and very much in support of the former president.
Well, Maria, I don't know about you, but I mean, for some of us who've seen this, we didn't notice that Mr. Trump's face was slightly different color to his hands. What do we know about how well the former president is taking all of this? Is he taking care of himself, health-wise, through this trial?
Well, I mean, as you said, this is not easy, and I think this is one of the first times that we are seeing that the former president is definitely impacted by this case and impacted about what is being said. And I think one of the first times that he potentially could be looking at something that, as you mentioned, prison time. And so this is not an easy one for him to be able to digest. We also know that he's very colorful in his delivery and in his approach to things. So we could expect that he would definitely have some sort of a emotion, and we would be able to see something as an impact to him as a result of this case.
And finally, Maria, before I let you go, I understand Republican politicians are already using this trial as an excuse to campaign his presidential bid. How is that going?
Well, as we just mentioned a little bit, the Speaker, Mike Johnson, was there supporting him. And so that is that is the second in line for presidency. So God forbid if something happens to the president and vice president, he would be that person. And so having the third person in line at the highest office for the American government, I mean, that says a lot to have them standing there beside him. So I think they're hoping that the Republican support could potentially help the former president as it relates to the jurors, as it relates to the judge, and obviously most importantly as it relates to his election bid that he is hoping to be able to clinch over the next few months. So I think that he's standing on that and believing that the Republican Party will continue to support him.
All right. Thank you very much, Maria Bird, our Washington, D.C. correspondent. Thanks a lot for your time on The World Today. Two other stories away from the United States politics. A Thai activist accused of insulting the country's monarchy has died in detention following months of long hunger strike. According to officials, 28-year-old Netiporan Bong died after her heart stopped suddenly this morning. She was part of a youth movement calling for royal reforms and had been detained since the 26th of January this year, facing 7 separate charges, including 2 of insulting the monarchy. She was demanding reform of Thailand's justice system, including changes to the notorious Lese Majesty law, which criminalizes critical comments about the royal family. She had initially been held on a contempt of court charge, with her detention extended after bail in a separate case as it was revoked. Over 300 people have been killed by flash floods caused by heavy rains in northern Afghanistan, including more than 1,600. Authorities are saying the floods have devastated villages as villagers buried their dead, and aid agencies are warning of widening havoc. Thousands of homes were damaged and livestock wiped out. The Taliban-run refugee agency aid group warned of the damage to healthcare facilities and vital infrastructure, such as water supply, with streets left coated in mud. Taliban Economy Minister Din Mohammed Hanif has appealed to the UN relief agencies and private businesses for assistance. Other northern provinces in Afghanistan, including Badakhshan and Herat, have all been impacted by heavy rains and flooding. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens others injured after a huge billboard fell on them during a thunderstorm in India's financial capital, Mumbai. According to local authorities, the billboard collapsed on some houses and a petrol station next to a very busy road in the eastern suburb of Ghatkapar, following gusty winds and rains which happened late on Monday. Many others were trapped following that incident, with rescue operations continuing till early Tuesday. Mumbai's municipal corporation has said that 74 people have been taken to hospital with injuries following that accident, of which 31 of them have been discharged. Let's head to South Africa now, where the tragic toll of the George building collapse has reached 32, with a recovery of 8 more victims on Tuesday. Currently, 13 are receiving medical care in different hospitals. Despite 1 week passing since the multi-story building's collapse, the cause of this devastating event remains elusive, prompting ongoing rescue efforts and investigations by Western Cape authorities. In the meantime, the Premier of Western Cape Province has said that he will not give us hope of pulling more survivors from the rubble of the 5-story building that collapsed in the city of George just 8 days ago. Alan Winder said that rescue operation is proceeding layer by layer to ensure the safety of anyone still trapped alive.
The mission is continuing as fast as possible and as careful as possible, but hopefully and we believe there's a possibility that there could be more life down there.
Earlier on, my colleague Jakero just spoke with our correspondent in South Africa, Innocent Semosa. Well, he gave updates on the continuous rescue operations going on in Western Cape. Let's hear that.
The death toll in the George building collapse stands at 33 after intense overnight rescue workers. Of course, we do know that 19 people are still unaccounted for. 6 victims were identified after the collapse of this partially built building in George in the Western Cape. But of course, like you rightly alluded, the municipality said rescue workers and other role players have been on site for more than 184 hours. This is almost 8 days where they've been really hard at work, and they've mentioned the difficulties that they encountered in terms of, rescuing the people there because of the concrete slabs in that particular building that are very hard to essentially penetrate. We are told by the authorities that about a total of 81 people were on site when the incident occurred. To date, 61 have been rescued and recovered, of which 33 are deceased, and of course 12 hospitalized. The contractor was given an opportunity to build a 3-story building, but they said that they put building on top of that. Essentially they built 5 because now there's basement. So the structure was not particularly the structure was not strong enough to handle the weight. So that's why the building really did not fall sideways, but it sunk. So apparently there was not enough concrete by the slab of the building under there. So those are the reports that we're getting, but these are just speculations from different engineering experts. We're hoping that as investigations continues, we'll perhaps hear something from these 3 governments. Look at the area and give you the square meters and survey the area if it's suitable to basically build something that goes up. But I guess it does seem as though with the situation, regulations were flouted. And it brings questions to whether or not the municipality was consulted. And if they were consulted, who approved for that building to be 5 stories when it was supposed to be 4? So those are the questions that we ask ourselves. But we need to also bear in mind that there is an issue of corruption where a contractor would flout some regulations and maybe give an official a brown envelope to basically pass him to basically build a particular structure. But from the regulation side in South Africa, I do know that you have to consult with the municipality. The municipality must give you a go-ahead, and they should give you square meters as to how much you're going to build there, and if it's in a residential area, do you have evacuation procedures in place in case of fire or in case of emergency? So those are the things that they look at. But I guess with this building, there were many things that were really overlooked, because just before I conclude, Joke, there were when someone was working there was explaining who survived. They said that there was essentially a lady that was working there. In fact, they were even mixing a cement with a bucket. So that just tells you that these people who were building there, it was they were not qualified or trained properly to build that kind of a building, given the fact that, of course, some of them, you would put it as a cheap labor, because some of those people are undocumented foreigners, so they cannot complain about the money that the contractor is giving them. So that is why I'm saying there are many regulations here that they were flouted. Hence, we see the company or the contractor taking down their social media handles and, of course, their website, Jockey.
In Chad, the opposition leader says that he has filed an appeal with the country's Constitutional Council to challenge the preliminary results of the May 6th presidential election. In social media posts, Success Masra shared a copy of the receipt showing that documents had been filed with the council. The election's preliminary results showed President Mohamed Deby Inter won with just over 61% of the vote, and runner-up Masra had over 18.5%. Mr. Masra, the Prime Minister of Chad's transitional government, had claimed victory shortly before that announcement and alleged that election results were being manipulated. A group of Sudanese volunteers have launched a medical project called the Free Pharmacy. It is an initiative inside the Al Nal Hospital in Omdurman to provide free of charge medicines to patients.
Sudanese patients queuing and waiting to receive free medicines from the pharmacy in the Al Nal Hospital in Omdurman as workers discuss prescriptions with them. This is the brainchild of a group of volunteers to help the Sudanese people in need of medical aid, even as the war in the country rages on. The Al Nal Hospital has been closed since the start of the war, But the neighborhood and some resistance committees, as well as the volunteers, agreed to resume operations at the hospital.
We posted on social media that we needed doctors, nurses, and pharmacists to work with us at the hospital. Ever since, we have been providing the necessary services for patients and those wounded amid the deteriorating humanitarian conditions as a result of the war.
According to Muamin Ahmed, there is a huge demand for medications, and the workers and volunteers work for almost 24 hours a day.
Sometimes we distribute 100 boxes of some types of medicine, such as Samizon antibiotics. In some cases, we can't pay for the supplied medicines until the end of the month. We work in shifts of almost 24 hours. We close the pharmacy before dawn and reopen it at 9 a.m. More than 30 volunteers are involved in this initiative. Some of them handle emergency cases and provide directions to patients.
Sudan has been through challenging conditions since fighting broke out between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. According to the United Nations, 14,000 people have been killed in the ongoing war. The war has forced more than 8 million people to leave their homes, including 1.8 million outside the country, making Sudan the country with the highest displacement rates in the world.
Taiwan believes that Nigeria has the potential to develop its technology and boost bilateral trade between both countries. And this was part of the conversation at the Nigeria-Taiwan Business Forum held in Lagos. The Director General of NACIMA, Mr. Olushola Obadimu, who attended that event, is asking that policies be more focused.
Taiwan Business Forum in Nigeria has its eyes on improving on the $500 million volume of trade recorded in 2023, a volume that places Nigeria in second position among Taiwan's African trading partners.
What you have seen all around you are representing Taiwan's industrial power based on our good education, our good investment into promoting our own brain power. So Taiwan and Nigeria is a mutually complementary partners. We always said that because we, the people in Taiwan, we do only legitimate, fair, and free trade. We do not come to your backyard, dig your gold. We do not do illegal mining and stealing your solid mineral. We provide good equipment. We sell you with good facility and know-how. You buy the product, you buy the facility, and you produce your own product. We will buy from you with fair market price. This is what we call a legitimate trading.
Many lessons which Nigeria can learn from Taiwan abound, and participants, including the Director General of NACIMA, has this on his mind.
Around 1960, together with these Far Eastern countries, we were about the same thing economically. But you know, focus is a big thing. Leadership is a very big thing when it comes to running national economies. You don't run national economies as if you are running a shop. It's different. And we've got to develop to a point where we've got to have our long-term goals set, that people, whoever comes to power, can still see that goal and key into it.
Apart from the lessons to be learned from the survival of Taiwan economy in the face of natural disasters, Nigeria seeks to acquire skills in technology, which has made Taiwan a major exporter of machinery to the United States, Nigeria, and other countries.
The 79-year-old bodybuilder in Iran is proving that age is no barrier to achieving peak physical fitness. Davoud Nouri in Tehran says that he has been pumping iron for over 20 years and hopes to inspire young people to head to the gym and get in shape. Footage shows the elderly powerhouse doing pull-ups, lifting weights, and even running on treadmills to stay fit and healthy. It says that he enters the gym before 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. every every day, going 600 to 700 horizontal bar push-ups, parallels and Swedish-style push-ups. And after that, the 79-year-old adds that his primary motivator is to not get sick, claiming that he has never taken shortcuts and has always looked after his health. The veteran athlete said that he takes inspiration from fellow countryman Hadi Kupan, who won the Mr. Olympia competition in 2022, and Ronnie Coleman from the United States, widely regarded as the greatest bodybuilder of all time. Well, I guess this should inspire you to hit the gym, eat healthy, and of course, stay happy. You have no excuse. That's the secret to having a healthy lifestyle. And that's it on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu.